Welcome back to Rich Words Music, where today I am joined by one of the icons of the guitar gear YouTube scene. He's a bold man with a very extravagant taste in clothing and fantastic guitar skills. But today we're here to talk about songwriting. It's Mr. Henning Pauly.
Hey, Rich.
Hi.
Why is your channel called, okay, Rich I get, music I get. What about the words?
Originally, when I started my channel, I wanted to have a word that begins with W because my middle name also begins with W, RWM. But I also intended my channel to be about songwriting and about my favorite artists and songwriters, and particularly lyricists. And that was the words part, but I've just never got around to doing it.
So funny enough, this question felt planned and staged, but you know it wasn't because you didn't know it was coming.
No, exactly. And that's actually the truth as well. Like, I'm very much into songwriting, and you've just released a course, which I believe you're trying to sell to the best of your ability right now. And
let's make this video really, really short. Everyone watching, buy the course. It's awesome. You won't find a more awesome course. It's not just me. It's also another person. And then it's good. So it's long. And good price. Buy it. Done.
Exactly. So business covered. There will be links down there in the description. We'll talk about the course a bit later at the end. But I wanted to talk about the stuff behind the course. I mean, you've come from decades of experience. Very good. Everybody watching this, you'll see that visual pun that Henning's just made. Henning's had decades of experience as a songwriter, as a gear demoer guy, as a musician live in the studio. You've produced a lot. You've worked with many actually top-notch musicians. Tell me, where did it start for you when it comes to songwriting?
Ooh. But I have to read you a comment on Jamie Humphrey's video. Geez, Jamie, I know Henning is a professional YouTuber, but he's not a songwriter. Wasn't expecting an ad for him on this channel. So Jamie's catching shit for this. Henning is a professional YouTuber, but he's not a songwriter. So I would like to know what makes one not a songwriter, because I've written thousands of songs, but does that not make me a songwriter? I don't know. Just saying. Where did it start? Really early on. Started playing guitar in 1990, and really early on I wanted to record and build. I recorded on a little actual big tape reel thing that my dad had with a mic just lying in the room. Horrible stuff. But I liked putting things together. And then I got a Roland D20, which had a 20-channel or 8-channel MIDI sequencer in it. So I like to put this stuff together. You know, boom, check, boom, 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 check, boom, check, boom, you know, that kind of stuff. And it early on was me putting things together on an Atari ST in Steinberg's 24, which had 24 MIDI channels, and then working in Cubase. So it was never the big cover thing. It was never me learning Van Halen riffs and worshipping that stuff. It was putting songs together, writing for bands. I very early on had bands with original music, which sucked. You know, that's how you get better. You suck a lot, and then you work your way up.
It's the idea.
That's how that works. Yeah, so it was always, was it songwriting or was it arranging or was it production? And what's the difference? How would you define the difference, Richard?
That's a much deeper question. So for me, songwriting is combining the three core things that actually I believe you speak about in the course, which would be the lyrics, the melody, and the harmony. Putting those things together to make a song. For me personally, a songwriting process has always been an intensely personal thing. And that's why to date, I haven't actually shared anything on my channel, because it's going to take a while for me to get there, to put that stuff out there. But for me, songwriting comes often with words, hence the name of my channel. I write a lot of lyrics, I write a lot of texts, and this is where it starts for me. It's an outpouring of emotions. It's a way to express myself that I can't in any other way. And it's also being inspired by people who make music themselves. And I've forgotten what your question was, but I hope it was a good answer
What's the
anyway.
difference between songwriting? You nailed it. It is a song is not a recording. It's not even a performance. A song is defined by the chords, so the harmony, the lyrics, if there's lyrics, and the melody. If it's an instrumental, it is chords and melody. That defines a song. Then what you do with it is technically the arrangement. So it would be arrangement and production, where's the difference? So arrangement would be what instruments are now playing that? Is the melody being harmonized by another vocalist? Are there drums? Is there some kind of percussion? Is it an orchestra? Is it a big band? What are the notes that are making up the actual song? And the production would be recording that and putting that all together, and maybe how it is mixed, how the arrangement is actually recorded and put together. And that could involve some artificial things, synthesizers, loops, whatever. But when you talk about a production, it is how is the arrangement being recorded and put into a nice package. But we don't talk about production. We don't talk about arranging as little as possible. The whole course, believe it or not, all 52 hours of it is songwriting. It is about finding the right chords and then putting a good, memorable melody on it, contrasting in different parts to other parts, writing motifs, finding the motif, being able to say, okay, this is enough. Now let's mirror that with a different ending, and lyric writing. And you said you start with lyrics. It doesn't matter where you start. Everyone's got their very own personal inspiration. Some people, Jamie Humphrey said, fuck lyrics, I don't care. It's not my thing, you know? So sometimes, what if you don't have lyrics? What if there's a day where you couldn't find the words to start with? Is it a day where you can't write a song? This is what the course is about, because you could then say, I'll take a different start today. I have these cool chords. Let's see if I can find a melody to that. Well, now I have a melody that has a certain rhythm. How do I put words into that and still make the words count? Which is very difficult, but I mean, that's the challenge. It's a puzzle piece. And sometimes you start the puzzle, oh my God, that's a good analogy, you know, from the edges. And sometimes you open the box and a couple things fall out and you're like, I have this piece in the middle. Maybe I'll start from the middle. It's not always the same thing. Sometimes you're not inspired, you put on a loop, just some drum groove. Oh, that's so cool. And you write a riff, and you know what? The riff kind of falls into the emphasis of where the kick drum lies, and you let the drums guide you. Well, if your rhythm and your chords are guided by the kick drum, all of a sudden your melody is guided by the chords, and everything is then, the spark was the kick drum pattern, but here's a whole arrangement and song. So if you're not inspired by lyrics every day, doesn't mean you can't write. You can always take some form of inspiration and develop that, but only if you have a toolbox, and we give you that toolbox.
Talking about inspiration then, who were the first songwriters that inspired you to pick up a guitar or to start singing or to start making loops? Who made you want to become a songwriter? And what was it about the pieces of music that inspired you?
I was moved emotionally. It did something for me that other music didn't, which was a Bon Jovi. But before I finish that sentence, I see myself less as a songwriter, but a vehicle to help songwriters. So I can write songs, and I'm not shit at it. I'm great at it when I'm working with someone. When a songwriter comes in the room and has very simple building blocks, same damn 4 chords over and over, but then molding that. And that is actually more of what a producer does. A producer goes and works with a songwriter or a band and says, this is really cool, but how about a harpsichord? Or how about double the verse? Or how about replacing that 4 chord with a 2 chord? How about starting on the 1 here with the vocals and not always on the 2? Giving those little elements, those little coaching ideas to just bring the song to make it into the diamond that it can be when it was brought in a very rough form. That's really what I see myself as, which is why I have Rafael with me doing the course, because he's a pure songwriter. He sits there with a piano or guitar and writes brilliant stuff, and then has the knowledge to know it can go further. I bring it to Henning, and together we mold it into what it needs to be, which is why I think the course is so strong, because He's a stronger songwriter than I am, but I'm a stronger producer than he is. So Bon Jovi, I was confirmation, whenever you're confirmed in Germany, religious thing, 14, 15. My brother gave me the first Bon Jovi album. It was probably dirt cheap in a bargain bin somewhere. And up to that point, I had albums. I had vinyl. I was listening to music. I never experienced music as something that moves you emotionally. It was always just playing. It was just going on. And I put on that Bon Jovi album. The song Runaway starts and my world changed. I was jumping up and down. I'm like, oh my God, this is doing something to me, you know? And all the other music didn't. Music was always just there, but it was never life-changing in a way. It was never moving. And then I started buying the Bon Jovi albums and taped the whole weekend on MTV, which happened to be the Monsters of Rock weekend, 1990. And that happened to be, or 1989 actually. Let me turn the Bing off. And that happened to be Whitesnake, Aerosmith, Bon Jovi, I think Motley Crue, Red Hot Chili Peppers, which I've never liked. Like all these 80s bands, Guns N' Roses. So that was playing all weekend long. I made a whole 4-hour VHS tape, wrote down all the albums, bought those albums. And that was what started me on this path that I am on now.
So do you have an influential musician who is kind of your sort of the person you aspire to be or the person you look up to the most as a songwriter? Or is it more just kind of these bands that you sort of drowned in when you were a kid?
I would say it really depends on the style because I am very diverse stylistically. I've done a lot of progressive rock and progressive metal, and you can't say Bon Jovi inspired me to do that. However, when I write progressive rock, I try to make it very memorable and poppy.
Yeah.
In terms of the melodies, which Dream Theater, for example, can't. They can do once in a while. So I'll grab the riffing and complexity from Dream Theater or Spock's Beard, very different, pull that into my music, whereas the feel for songwriting, I probably be guided by someone like Bon Jovi, where it's a rock song with a good hook, Hanson, killer hooks, very handmade music, some back then kids. And then in my own music, when it's a super mega metal, brutal prog thing, all of a sudden you have a solo where it comes in, you're like, that's a John Mayer solo. Why in the world would he have that in there? Well, because in my music, I can throw anything together. Doesn't necessarily make it cohesive, great music, but I like to troll people. But I think it really depends on what style you're talking about and then drawing inspiration from that. And I get bored with myself. So I've done a couple of progressive rock and metal albums and people said, oh my God, he's hot shit. It was funny because magazines were throwing around the word, a new genius in the blah, blah. And I was laughing. I'm like, yeah, no. But then I get bored. I'm like, okay, check mark. I've done this. Let's do a classic 80s metal thing and learn about that. Listen to Dio, listen to Manowar, and let's do that. Let's find out what makes this stuff tick, lyrically, melodically, harmonically, production-wise. And then I went to 70s classic rock. Let's find out singer-songwriter stuff with, female vocals. I like to analyze music and then see if I can do it. Because if I can, check mark, let's move on. So that's my world, and that's why I think I have a wide range of things I can talk about.
Yeah, sure. So you're like a jack of all trades. But if you were to look at any of the thousands of songs that you've listened to or helped to write and produce over the years, are there any where you've kind of thought the first time you heard it, this song's basically perfect? Are there any examples of almost perfect songs that you've heard that you can share?
Interestingly, on first listen, difficult, because I would consider John Mayer to be very, very close to perfect because it's simple, not show-offy in any way, beautifully performed, and his whole albums as a whole capture a mood. But every single time I listened to a John Mayer album for the first time, I was like, boring. Doesn't grab me. They had to grow. They really had to grow. I think when it comes to like rock music, Hinder is a band that has very, very perfect songs in the kind of like hard rock genre. You know, love songs, songs about rock and roll. So they really hit the right words for the style. And they're so perfect that they have transitional bridges, or pre-choruses as some people would call them, that are so strong that you're like, oh, this is a great chorus. And then the chorus hits and you're like, how the fuck is it possible that wasn't even the chorus? So they have parts in their songs where you go like, this is a great song, and then it gets better from there. And they do this over and over, where you go like, oh, that pre-chorus is so good, how is that not the chorus? And then the chorus hits you like, oh, because the chorus is even better. This is pretty damn perfect music. And sometimes it's the music that isn't perfect that you still love.
Yeah.
Like, when it comes to lyrics, I'm very picky about phrasing. Sing the words and place them in the meter where they would be in a sentence. Not a sentence, a sentence.
Yeah.
So that's on the downbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4 sentence. Not 1, 2, 3 sentence. Because that's just dumb. It's not how language works. If you want people to understand your lyrics intuitively, without diving in deep, without paying attention, just listen to it and know what you're saying. You have to sing it in a way that it falls rhythmically into place like the language naturally does. It's not language, it's language. So that means certain words have to be on certain beats. And that means you might have to stretch it by putting a the in there that you don't need, or a then or an and, just to move that one word back so that it's in the right place. And that's the correct way of doing it. That's the way I want to do it in my songs. That's the way I'm slaving people in the studio to do when I'm working with them. And there are songs that annoy me to death, like Zombie, okay? Where many words are mispronounced. And I don't like the song. So there I go like, I don't like it because of it. But I love Colby Calais. And Colby does it all the time. I hate it. Like her dad, who produces her, probably doesn't dare to tell the daughter, or doesn't know. Like, I'm like, why not just work with her for 5 minutes and move these words around? And it would be so much more perfect. Yet, I really enjoy the music. So it bugs me. I know it's wrong. I would love to do it better. It doesn't break the spell. It doesn't kill the music. It kills it on the new Foo Fighters song, which is called Rescued.
Yeah.
And what are they singing? I would like to be rescued. He's actually, every single time he's saying the word rescued, is putting the emphasis on the you'd. Rescued. It drives me nuts. It's like, it's so unnecessary.
Maybe he's from that part of America where they do sort of pronounce things differently. Like, you know, you're in country town if they say police instead of police. Did you ever think about that? He's not.
I actually had
it could be a possibility.
In England, I actually had an argument with one of the vocalists I was working with Julie Thompson. What was the word there? Frustrated.
Yeah.
Avril Lavigne. I was like, why do you have to be so complicated? Frustrated.
Complicated. Frustrated.
Because she's singing, why do you have to be so complicated? Frustrated. And I'm like, she's taking the easy way out by emphasizing things that shouldn't be emphasized that way. However, Canada, probably more British English. And in British English, it is frustrated. It's not frustrated.
No. Emphasis is on the traded. Frustrated. Frustrated.
And I was thinking American English, where it's frustrated.
Yep, there you go.
So it is important to know where the vocalist comes from, where the band comes from. There are certain words like this where the emphasis is different in different languages, and I didn't know. And the frustrated in Avril Lavigne and in Julie's song always bugged me until I understood that that's British English, and I'm like, okay, fine. Then it's okay as long as people can understand it. But yeah, for example, that's something for me where I would say a perfect song needs that. On the other hand, music that really means a lot to me has these mistakes in it. Mistakes.
Yeah.
But perfection doesn't mean it's good, necessarily.
No, and I think often the most highly polished and produced things, the technically perfect things, at least for me personally, are the emotionally imperfect ones. I like punk music. I like mistakes being made. I like it when guitars or vocals are slightly out of tune. That's my bag.
Oh, and I think it should be. And I think at some point we have to have an analysis of what's that band where the guy isn't around anymore and he was a baby swimming around? I don't know.
No idea. Or are you joking? Are you talking about Nirvana?
Thank you.
That wasn't a joke, was it? Oh, okay.
Oh, I freaking hated them. And that song with the baby, when the baby was a teen. I don't know. Spirited Things.
Yeah.
I'd love to analyze that because I think he jumps up a minor third, but the question is, he plays power chords. But the thing is, even if you play power chords, there is an underlying harmony that you're hearing. You could turn these into major or minor chords. And I really want to find out what actually is happening there harmonically. Because he's doing the 1 to 4 and then jumps up a minor third, and it's not within a key. I know that much. There's definitely some modal interchange going on and some cool harmony stuff that gives it that vibe that the song has. And I can't stand it. I think it's dumb, but I'd love to find out what makes it as dumb as it is.
Yeah, so Kurt Cobain was an absolutely fascinating character, and one of the amazing things about him that I think you can find elsewhere in the literature is that he was an incredible songwriter. He used a lot of amazing techniques that many famous songwriters use, but he had no theoretical basis for that himself. He was doing what sounded right, working with his gut, what just sounded good in his head. So he wasn't a learned songwriter in that way. How important...
And the thing is, that totally works. That is absolutely valid. But the thing is, it is a much longer process.
Yeah.
Either you're brilliant, and you just play.
That's going to be my question. How important is theory, in your opinion, in making a competent songwriter? Or to what extent does music theory give you advantages or give you disadvantages as a writer?
Those are two very different questions. How important is it to be a competent songwriter? 0. Because with intuition and having listened to a million songs and having experience by just moving chords around, you don't even need to know what they're called. If you feel like, okay, the next thing is that weird triangle shape, then you go to the triangle shape. So 0 important. But usually that process of intuitively finding the other chord is taking longer because you hear it, but then you have to find out which chord that is. Okay, so it's a longer process. It's not a targeted process. Communicating with other musicians, very difficult. Because you can't say, this chord, this chord, this chord. You can't give them ideas. You can't write it down. These are skills that are very helpful in communicating your music with other people. And because it takes longer, you're not as efficient. And maybe you don't have to be. Maybe writing 3 songs a year is fine. But knowing what works also means you can deviate from it. But by your intuition, which is great, but it also could hinder you in not using some of the really cool shit. Like your intuition might be based on certain songs and you're writing it and you're all diatonic, you're within a key, and sometimes you do a secondary dominant like a 5 chord that draws somewhere because you feel that that's what it needs, which is great. But there's some really cool stuff that if you actually know that it exists and you can use it, you could actually use it in a situation where you don't necessarily hear it, where you're like, I know this is something that exists. Let me try that here. Because I think it would be cool, and then you're trying it. So you're not necessarily 100% hearing it, but the knowledge of it existing can be cool. For example, we talk about in the course about prosody, which is when you have the music really emotionally underlining the words. So when you're saying, will I ever see her again? Well, that's a question, right? So singing that on the one chord, on the home chord, on the everything is fine and I'm back home, everything is resolved chord, makes very little sense because it is a question. It's a question into the future that will remain unanswered, which means the music should sound up in the air, unanswered. The music should sound like a question. And intuitively, you could find a chord that does that. I know what does that, which means I'm not looking around. I'm not hoping on the guitar player coming in and accidentally playing something that sounds like it. I know that a sus chord, a sus2 or a sus4, will sound floaty. If I really want to make people feel that it's unanswered and will remain unanswered and just completely up in space, I'm going to go to a 4 chord with a major 7 and a sharp 11, because that's a Lydian mode, and that chord absolutely sounds like Star Wars in space. It'll never be resolved. So knowing these things can, in a very targeted way, give you really cool shit. For example, knowing that I could do a flat 7, flat 6 chord progression, which is a borrowed 4/5 from minor. Sounds really complicated. Now it really isn't. All this stuff is very simple. But that actually can give me the super build up to go back home to the 1. We all know 4/5/1, the typical. I don't have a guitar here. I do. Oh, it's actually her. We can actually hear it. It's plugged in. I didn't know. Oh, 4/5/1. It's very loud. Let's do this. 4/5/1. Okay, so that's cool, and we all know that. And you want to go back to the 1, you do the 5 in front of it, or the 5/7. What if I want to make that a bigger build-up? You know those build-ups with the snare and the tom, the gong, 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 and I really want to draw that out in front of the last chorus after the bridge and just make a statement of just like, we are going to explode into that last chorus. So what you could do, for example, and this is something I don't have to look for, this is something I just know works. You do the 4. Instead of doing the 5, you do the 5 as a sus4. Then you do it as a triad. Then you do it as a 7. So my progression would be... But if I put the 4 and 5, this is the 4 and 5 in major. If I put the 4 and 5 from the related minor key behind those. So I'm going into D. So right now I'm going into D minor, where the D would be the 6 minor. And now I'm doing the 4 and 5, which would be B flat. So for a little dip, I go into D minor. In the end, I'll end up in major. But that gives me this. A 4, a 5, a flat 6, that's such a massive build-up. All these are options. All these are options that with knowledge, I can go to directly. Don't have to hope that inspiration strikes. Don't have to hope that my guitar player knows it. I want to build up. I can do that. I want to do less movement. I want to have my I like my chorus, it's all good, but my verse seems kind of busy. So how do I do something that feels a bit more stagnant, a bit more standing in place? Where you just, for example, I have a chord progression, let's say A, E and D. All good, but I could just put a bass note behind, under it as a pedal. That's kind of just sitting there, right? So that could be my verse 1. And now I'm using exactly the same thing, going into verse 2, but I'm moving the bass notes. And all of a sudden, more movement. So being able to move the pace forward, break it, build tension, release tension, and not relying on, I've heard that somewhere, how does that go? I mean, it's a craft, it's a skill. It's not wanting to say that someone like Kurt Cobain couldn't write great music, or other people that didn't have the skills in that way. But my synthesis teacher, Tom Ray, he wrote the manual for the Minimoog. He said a professional in any field, this is one of the most important lines of my life, is someone who can predict the near future. And that is true for a mix engineer who, I want the vocals to be louder. Now, you're not gonna randomly start moving faders. Would be ridiculous, right? To just randomly start moving any kind of fader in the hopes that the vocals get louder. What are you gonna do? You're gonna reach for the vocal fader because that makes sense, right? So you're gonna pull that down? No, because you know in the near future, if I move that fader up, the resulting sound will be the vocals will be louder. That's very obvious there. What if my sound is a little bit dull and it's a synthesizer sound? Well, I'm not gonna go and reach for any patch cables. I have a thing that says cutoff frequency, and I'm going to increase that cutoff frequency because I know what's going to happen because that it will be brighter. So for synthesis, knowing what you do before you reach for the fader or knob is predicting the near future. But think about it. It goes for everything. A car mechanic. If I turn it to the right, my nut will be tighter. If I turn it to the left, it will not be. Righty, tighty, lefty, loosey. So being able to predict the near future, very important for stock traders. But I mean, think about it. You as someone who has to work with influencers, for example, people like me, you're not going to waste your time on people that you can't get to. You know they're going to say no anyway because you're predicting the near future. If I do this and this and this, this will probably be the result. So therefore, you're a professional in your field if you can, in a very targeted way, already kind of know what happens when you do a certain action. And that is what I think the course is about. We can't teach being inspired. You have to have a vast knowledge of bands and music to have this library in your head. We all need that. And if we write the same song, we sit in the room, you might go and have a target note that goes up and mine goes down. Neither of them is wrong. But you've heard many songs where people go down, and I've heard many songs where people go up. And in the end, I sing no, and you're gonna sing no. Both work, okay? So whatever melody line, so the melody line might start, and I hear ha, and you hear ha, ha. Both fine, but your experience says down, mine says up, and then we fight. So that is based on all the music you've ever listened to. But being able to control where a chord progression goes, being able to make a chord progression interesting, and just giving you ideas. For example, Kurt might have written a very simple 1-4-5-1, okay? Probably not, okay? But knowing that you can replace the 4 with a 2 might have given him an option. You're playing this thing over and over and you're like, but it's just the same thing. So what could I change that F to? You can try to find something by moving your fingers randomly, but I know that a 4 can be replaced by a 2. So that knowledge just means I have an option that's readily available right there. I know for a fact that 90% of chance is there that it will work with the same melody. And when I'm working with a songwriter, having these substitutions is fun because all of a sudden you can make it more interesting. We have a whole lesson in the course with Nessa Vance where she has a song which is really good, but it's boring her. She's not happy with it. And I'm reharmonizing it with, I'm really not writing too much new stuff, but I'm doing some pulls towards chords. I'm keeping it stagnant with a pedal tone and adding some sus where she had triads, just little things that I know work and she didn't. And all of a sudden we have a song that she's now super happy with. As in anything, know your tools. It doesn't matter what you do. A programmer can't just willy-nilly hit things on the keyboard because he feels like it. They kind of have to know what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there's knowledge that can help you with that, and there's also certain formulas that work with listeners when it comes to writing songs. So to go from the opposite of Kurt Cobain, which would be someone like Max Martin, why are songwriters like Max Martin so successful?
Who's Max Martin?
Exactly.
No, I don't know.
You genuinely don't know.
I've heard the name. Help me.
Are you being serious?
Yeah, I'm serious. I'm fully serious.
Okay.
I'm not shitting you.
Max Martin is one of probably the dominant songwriter from the past 20 or 30 years in terms of pop records. Starting with groups like the Backstreet Boys, through to artists like Taylor
Swedish
Swift
dude.
and so on. Yeah.
It's from this little studio in Sweden where literally everything was written.
Indeed. But it doesn't have to be literally Max Martin. Why are people like him successful today? What have they mastered? Is it a formula that they found?
They understand that there is no new music. There isn't a magical chord progression. They do understand how to generate tension, how to generate a cool groove that doesn't need tension. They understand the emotional contour of a song. Where does it need to go? Form is important, you know? I have fans of mine sending me material and you realize like, they don't know where to place the chorus. They don't know what a bridge is. This is way too long, this is way too short. Chorus is in a weird place. I think he understands, don't try to find the magic scale. Doesn't exist. All the scales already exist. Don't try to find the magic chord progression. Chord progressions can't be copyrighted. Why? Because there literally are not that many that work. The trick isn't be original with your melody, with your chord progression. The trick is the whole. Each individual element isn't going to be original. Each individual element isn't going to be original. That's the right sentence. But the simple trick, do it well. For the Axis of Awesome. Have you seen that video? I'm sure you've seen the video on YouTube. Yes. So, Axis of Awesome is literally any song from Greensleeves to Bon Jovi. I don't know what are the. I want to say Deep Purple, but that's not true. I want to say Daft Punk, probably true. Why can't I think of the punk band? I want to say Linkin Park, but that's not right. Oh, I'm old.
Well, that's certainly true. Green Day.
Green Day, thank you. That was not it. Green Day. I can think of this, but not Green Day. So, Axis of Awesome is a 1, a 5, a 6, and a 4. We've literally heard it a million times, but the thing is, you don't hear it. You hear the song. So, nobody would say that Greensleeves is a Bon Jovi song. Nobody would say that Green Day, that Paparazzi has anything to do with Green Day. I mean, Lady Gaga, to tell the fans of both camps that it's literally the same chord progression. A chord progression doesn't define a style. So the thing is, you're Max Martin, you want to write a hit song, you know what you go to? You go to the fucking Axis of Awesome. Because you know you can find a melody that works. But more than that, you know that it's a shape, a sound that people are very familiar with. And that it very easily just goes down the gullets. It's easy to digest. Is it original? Is it cool? You know what? Yes, it is. Because Paparazzi, pretty cool. Green Day, pretty cool. Africa, pretty cool. You know? Toto. It's My Life, Bon Jovi, pretty cool. They all did their own thing with it. And that's really more in the arrangement and in the production to be original about it. Being original with the core element of the song. You don't have to be. So, same with rhythm. 3-3-2 is the rhythm. I mean, get my first reel and so on. So what do we have there? I mean, I didn't do the 2 at the end, but that is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. We know that. It's just such a familiar rhythm. And that's just one measure. It's 3/8 notes, 3/8 notes, and 2. And then you start over. You can do the long form, which is 3-3-3-3-2-2. And so on. You use that? Super simple. Clocks. Clocks from that band that wrote the song.
Coldplay.
Thank you. Apparently I don't know bands. That's literally the whole drums.
Yeah. It's all right.
Okay, good. We continue. So the 3-3, I get very excited about this. 3-3-3-3-2. You very easily recognize it if you're doing. It's very clear. Or. You know, sum of 69, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. But for example, Metallica-ish kind of power chord. Where's a 3-3-2? It's 4/16 and then 1/8 note break, which is technically a 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So the package builds a and so on. So these patterns, the 3-3-2-2 and the 3-3-3-3-2-2, are everywhere in music. They are rhythmically in so many vocal melodies. They're in so many rhythms. They're in so many drum parts. Clocks is only that. The piano thing. I tried as an exam, as a challenge in songs that I've recorded to switch that around, to do 3-2-3 and to do 2-3-3. Horrible songs, because your ear doesn't want to hear it. Your ear wants to hear the things that you're familiar with. So when you do 1-2, 1-2-3, 1-2-3, 1-2, 1-2-3, 1-2-3, automatically the strumming feels off, the rhythm feels weird, it feels like you're starting on the last beat, it feels everything is shifted because you're just not familiar with it. So what these great writers do is they know the stuff that doesn't work. They push it aside. They're like, what, would it be cool to do this? Maybe. Is it something people will instinctively gravitate to and understand? Absolutely not. Because you know what? A 3-3-2 is what they gravitate to. So let's do a 3-3-2 as a rhythm. Let's do a 1-6-4, 1-5-6 minor 4, the axis of awesome as my chords. And maybe you do it, just to be clever, with a 6 in the bass. Why not? And so on. And all of a sudden, this doesn't sound like Bon Jovi anymore. It sounds like nothing. It's like a little twist that you can simply know as an option, because you learned in my course, and then try it. Takes a minute to try. The other songwriter in the room goes, yeah, this is... I get it, because I've heard it a million times, but I also think it's something slightly original. So if you know the elements that work, use them. There's nothing wrong with it. A million other musicians have used them. Just do it well. Don't be lazy about it. Write good lyrics. Don't sit there and then go like, well, the second verse doesn't have to feel like the first. I think it should. Doesn't have to rhyme. Rhyming's lame. No, rhyming is hard. Put in the work. Rafael actually does sometimes rhyme in the middle of the sentence and at the end. And then you've got to mirror that, and mirror that, and mirror that. The song Tiffany that he wrote, he did exactly that. Insanely complex writing. So, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just rambling on because I'm very excited about all this stuff.
That's kind of the point. And if you're interested in the course, download links below. Now, you and Rafa are kind of a team, right? A collaborative effort on this course, and you touched earlier upon the idea that songwriters working together can spark ideas off one another. One thing that I've noticed in recent years is that more and more on chart-topping songs, on popular songs, you're getting massive teams of writers involved with songs. So for example, Uptown Funk. You know Uptown Funk, right? Yeah, that has 11 or 13 different writers on the song depending on where you look. And one of the biggest songs...
What?
Yeah, one of the biggest songs from last year was... First Class by a hip-hop artist called Jack Harlow, who you won't know. But that had 13 writers on it. Why do you think modern pop arrangements and songs have dozens of writers, whereas in the old days, you know, the songs that you grew up on, Bon Jovi, for example, it was probably 1 or 2 or 3 guys who came up with that. Is there a reason for that?
That to me makes zero sense. I have no idea how to write a song with 13 people. Could it be that it went through the hands of, especially in hip-hop, lyricists, who then added a line. And they're like, cool, you know, we're kind of cool, and it's my posse, and we're sitting in a room, and let's give the guy credit because he had the one line.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, and you also get credits for people who wrote the original songs when there are samples and stuff like that.
Yes.
But it's just... I don't know, for me personally, the idea of writing a song as part of a huge group, it sounds like a much different challenge than sitting at home with an acoustic guitar and an empty sheet of paper and writing out what comes into my head.
Massive challenge. With 2 people in the room, there's different experiences which can drive a song in a beautiful direction. For example, I think the strongest songs Bon Jovi had when there were 3 people involved. And 3 people each with a very particular strength. John Bon likes to just strum open chords. He's a guitar player, you know? He's got that kind of stuff. Very simple. And he can write magic with that. Doesn't make the songs very original, doesn't make them very clever, doesn't make them very rock and roll. As his last albums have shown, all the ones without Richie, because they are chord-based, and then they're arranged, which means you've got these beautiful... all that Tim Piercy kind of stuff happening, arranging-wise, but you don't have riffs anymore. You know, what was it? What is that? I don't know. Raise your hand, something like this. So he's the guy that writes simple chords. Done. The core of the song is done. Richie could write riffs that didn't kill the song. So if John was like doing this, then he was, which is nothing but a C minor, but in such a memorable way. Right, I've got to. So, he was the guy that gave it the rock and roll, the riff, the single note outline of what John was doing. And then you had Desmond Child, keyboard player for Great White. Desmond Child was involved in a lot of those songs on New Jersey and Slippery When Wet. And as a keyboard player, very different. I mean, when you write on keys, you can have hybrid chords, meaning you have a bass note that sticks there and you just move the upper chord, which on the guitars, as you've seen, I've done it, is rather difficult. So he was the guy who threw in the modulations, the cool chords, the modal interchange, meaning the borrowing from a related key. And when you look at, I think it's Bad Medicine or one of those songs on New Jersey, Born to Me, My Baby, it's in F sharp minor, and then in the chorus, it moves into A minor, which is a brilliant, it's such a brilliant transition, and the two are related. F sharp minor is A major, and therefore they're turning it around, they're going into related mode in the chorus, which is A minor. So it's not willy-nilly, there's a rhyme or reason to it, there's a way they're getting there, they're preparing that, but it's absolutely beautiful. Same thing on in You Give Love a Bad Name, there's this beautiful part which we just talked about earlier, that 4 and 5 in minor, where he's actually borrowing, we're in C minor, and he's borrowing the 4 and the 5 from C major. He's doing an F and a G. So these things, I'm pretty convinced, came from Desmond Child. So you got the guy in the room that can write on a guitar, not too clever, but very memorable, and from the heart, sings about Ricky and Johnny and people at the dock, in, very, very believable childhood memories. Getting goosebumps thinking about it. And then you got the guy that's clever with the piano knowledge, and then there's the rock and roll guy that throws in the riffs. That's the trifecta of brilliance. So Rafa's the guy that comes in with the chord. He's very clever with, harmony, but he writes a good song from the heart. Doesn't care about how to play guitar, whatever, he just does it. And then I'm the guy trying to make it semi-clever, or looking at his clever stuff and saying, could we do this? The other guy in the room can really help to elevate your music. Doesn't have to be me, can be someone else.
Yeah, sure. But this is actually the sort of the role that your course is going to play, right? You've got people with music, maybe with snippets, maybe with riffs, maybe with bits of songs, and now you can sell the course. Because the idea behind the course, Rice, is to help people get those ideas into coherent, finished songs. That's the goal, right?
The idea is you always have an inspiration from somewhere. Could be from a chord progression, could be you once I wanted to play this, and I had my finger wrong and I play this. Now that's a really cool chord. Took me years to find out what that actually is, because it's not a C sharp, it's actually an A. So, but you played something wrong. Great inspiration. Be able to see what it is, then know the key around it, so you actually know all the other possible chords, and then you have words your oyster, you can do stuff with it. Same thing with lyrics. You come up with a great line of lyrics in the shower, these 4 lines that are brilliant. Well, now you have to know what's the meter, what's the rhythm, what's the length, where are the emphases, so that in the second verse, you can do the same thing again, which is extremely hard, just with new words. Being able to recognize, okay, I'm starting in the verse every time on the 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, da 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 da. Every single time on the 2. You want to have a chorus that kind of stands out from it? Be aware that you're starting on the 2 every single time in the verse, and then don't do that in the chorus. Start on the 1 with longer words, or have a pickup, the ba-da-da, Just make sure that your chorus has a slightly different feel. You can only have a different feel if you know what the feel is in the part that you're already written. So the chorus will make you aware of what you're doing and give you the parts that you need that weren't inspired. It'll enable you to quickly go to them. It gives you ideas. It shows you that simplicity is totally fine. Beauty and the Beast, Disney, is 4/8 notes and a quarter note on the downbeat. It's 3 and 4 and 1. 3 and 4 and 1. 3 and 4 and 1. Every single time, every line, including the chorus and the verse, every single time is the same phrasing. It's the same motif. It's just absolutely mind-blowingly, geniusly done with the notes that they're picking. It is as simple as it gets and as complex as it gets. So we nerd out about that for about an hour and a half for different Disney songs. Do you need vast theoretical knowledge? We don't teach music theory. There's nothing about scales. There's nothing about circular fifth. There's nothing about accidentals. There's a lot of numbers because we talk about chord relationships. So there is a lot of theory, but there's not music theory. There's chord theory. A big distinction. And you do not need to know any of it because we start at what is a chord. 1, 3, 5. So we start at the very, very beginning, and at the lyrics, we start at the very, very beginning with the question of what is a word. Rafa really rolled it back to the very, very basics. And then we're going to show you how to construct a melody. What is a motif? How to arrange them. Building contrast. We're going to start with chords. How do you find melody without inspiration? Literally, in a very methodical way. Because sometimes you're stuck. There's no need to ever be stuck because you gotta freaking see. You got 3 possible notes. Fucking pick one. Sorry, I'm saying fuck a lot, but come on. So, we pick that one, okay? And then we have an A minor. We pick one. Wait a second. The same note is in there. Hey, we can sing the same note. And I'm gonna go do a G. We can all hear where it's going, but if you don't hear where it's going, wait a second, that's in the C, that's in the A, that's not in the G. What am I going to do? What's in the G? Or pick any of the other. The notes are literally in there. If you're stuck and you don't hear it in your head, start like this, inspiration will strike. You do this a little bit, and all of a sudden the next notes will reveal themselves. What if you start with notes? You have a melody. You have a melody. That was German. Melody. That your girlfriend brings and says, I wrote a song. You say, no, you didn't. You wrote a melody. Shut it. Know your place, woman. You know I don't mean it. So you got a melody. How do I find chords to that? That's actually really fun because each note could be the 1 in a major or minor chord. It could be the 3 in a major or minor chord. It could be the 5 in a major or minor chord. So you have 6 options for each melody note. That's actually what Nick Johnston does. He stays within a key, but then once in a while, especially on his last note of a line, there's this weird chord that just doesn't fit, but it sounds cool. Well, he looks at his target note that he plays and says, well, that can be the 1, the 3, and the 5 in 2 different chords. So you got 6 options. He tries them and plays the one that sounds cool. So we show you how to start with drums. We show you how to start with when lyrics are set. We show you how to work with a client that gives you direction. And we don't just talk about it theoretically. We show you on a full song how we're actually writing it, how we're actually implementing it. You see us sitting there writing a full song, getting stuck. Having Leslie come in over the intercom saying, oh, by the way, here's your chorus, and giving us the whole chorus and making us look very stupid. Having a writer in the other room that doesn't know she's a writer is also helpful. So it's all in there. The course is massive, and you should probably take a year to go through it bit by bit. But if after that you don't feel that you can actually get your songs finished and guide them to be better songs, then I don't know what else will.
Well, that's, yeah, okay, yeah. Based on the amount of footage that I've already seen, there is loads of stuff in there. So if you're interested, there will be links down there. Check it out. See if you'd like to support Henning, purchase his course, and support Rafa as well, the second brains behind it. And I have one very final question just to leave you with, based on your history, how you've got so far on YouTube. It's a crucial question. How important is guitar gear in the songwriting process?
That's a loaded question. Okay, obviously 0. Obviously, but obviously not. Because for me, the gear is the reason why I write now. Because I get a piece of gear, I get the Galaxy Tape Echo. Okay, so you're gonna write a metal song? No. It dictates what I have to write. If I want to demo this, which I don't, I review, but I want to put a song in the review featuring that tape echo. I cannot write what I want to write. I cannot write what inspiration gives me and the sun shines a certain way on my ass this day. No, it's a tape echo, which means certain things are set. I'm probably working with more clean, slightly overdriven tones. I'm probably trying to show off more vintagey 70s styles. I'm probably going more big and ambient instead of, metal genty because I literally couldn't use it there. So the gear that I use is very heavily dictating what I write, which is good because when you have a limitation, you're writing in a much more targeted way. When you're saying I'm doing classic rock, well, that means I'm not playing 7-string multi-scale guitars and I'm not playing through a riff. You're playing... So just like the style can dictate the gear that you're using, because it needs to match the style, the gear that you're using can actually give you a limitation on the style and the stuff that you're writing with it. If I'm playing a high gain sound, I'm not gonna do that chord because it'll sound like caca. So how important is the gear? Well, for me, it actually really tells me the direction I'm going in because I'm writing songs for gear showcases. But it also means that your gear will push you in a certain direction. Your amount of gain, your effects, that will all define kind of where your music is going. And also, it can inspire. So even if you're not limited by it, if you can just turn it off, but if you're getting a new piece of gear, that can really make you play something you've never played before. And then it's really good gear. If it's inspiring you to write a riff that you otherwise would have never written, it was already worth the purchase. So good gear versus bad gear doesn't matter. Gear can inspire writing. It can inspire playing, which then in turn means if you hadn't played that day because you didn't buy the 17th Tube Screamer, but you actually did because you bought the 17th Tube Screamer, all of a sudden you wrote that riff that you wouldn't have written without it. You know what? It was totally worth buying the 17th Tube Screamer. Now I've got this beautiful Shabbat Puma that I got yesterday. Thank you, Avi Shabbat. And it's got this weird wiggle sticking thing, jazz mastery thing, which I've never had on a guitar. And just these kind of sounds will clearly drive me in a different direction than if this was an 8-string Ibanez. So this will make me write a certain way.
Yeah.
So for songwriting, do you need specific kind of gear for songwriting? Absolutely not. But it's not in the way, and it can push you. And I do recommend having some sort of piano/key instrument around, even if you're a guitar player, because no matter how bad you are on it, that can actually, if you're a killer guitar player, that can actually roll back your skill and make you play some simple chords, which is good. And if you know more on piano, just the sound, the feel of sitting there, you focusing differently on harmonies, being able to have an independent left hand versus right hand. It will open up your songwriting. There's reasons to play on guitar, and we have a video on that, why you write on acoustic guitar. There's reasons to write on piano. We have a video on that. We have a video on how to turn your riffs into a song, and how to turn your song with normal chords into riffs. I don't think there's a video we don't have. We have a video on Vogue and poetry, if anyone's interested.
They're not. But that was actually... It was a fairly spurious question, the gear thing, but actually you've touched upon the perfect answer to it. It's all about inspiration. That's where songs come from, and if gear inspires us to play more music and make more original stuff, then all for the better. And the same with your course. Yep. As I said before, links down there if you're interested to check out Henning's course. Henning, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to me today, to give us your thoughts about the songwriting process, and to tell us about...
Sorry I went off for hours on things, it was
just like watching one of your normal videos, to be honest. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I get excited about this stuff.
It's all good. I shall link to Henning's channel down there as well anyway, if you don't by any chance know him and you would like to subscribe to him. But I've been Rich for Rich Words Music, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye for now. Yay. I saw that.
Don't get me started about songwriting.